The Bitcoin ETF doing well, I think it just cements, it makes it so much easier versus if we kind of waffled around and it was like, Bitcoin's kind of still where it was. All right, so building on that, this is where things kind of get interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. Let's say ETH ETF launches. I don't know if it happens end of this year or later this year or even next year. ETH ETF launches and it's just as successful to a certain degree as the Bitcoin ETF. Why would they stop there? If TradFi sees that there's just always going to be appetite for these things, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The other thing is, if the ETH ETF launches and passes, the question then becomes, especially with the SEC's track record versus tokens, there's a lot of other dinosaur old altcoins, which you can make almost a stronger case they're not a security. One that sounds ridiculous, but if you think deeply about it, it's true. Dogecoin, you could probably prove easier is not a security than ETH. ETH ETF launches out the gates and does super well. Why wouldn't they launch a Dogecoin? Yeah. Litecoin, Dogecoin. Am I getting too bull-hearted about this, or like that seems
so I think the way that it'll
realistic.
I think all those ETFs will get approved actually, because I think the SEC won't want to fight fights that it can't win anyways, and it doesn't.
That's what I mean. They've already lost this. They've basically already lost.
They've already lost it. They've already lost it. So they don't want to. No one wants to fight battles they can't win, right? So I think that what's going to happen is that a lot of stuff's going to get approved, and then eventually, like the pump effects will dissipate, right? Because I think that if you launch an ETF on like every single coin, people might not buy it. There's plenty of ETFs, for instance, that no one buys. If you go down, if you look at ETFs, there's many ETFs on sectors that have like no AUM. Yeah. Because I started my career in ETF arbitrage. Like I saw some ETFs get huge traction, and I saw other ones like that were really hyped get no traction. And actually, the seeding of these is a bit like ICOs too, because they have to go to the market makers and say, please buy 5 million of my ETF and just like hedge it, and that way it's on the books. There's some AUM, and the market maker's like, okay, fine, like I'll do it, but you got to give me something back. And then people were seeding these like bond ETFs back then, these Asia bond ETFs. No one bought these, but then bond ETFs in the US are huge, and so you never know what takes off in the ETF space itself even. Yeah. But here, I think it's going to be similar, where I think there's going to be some shenanigans for sure, right? Because
I don't know how we don't get that. It's not even a question of like what's their appetite for. I think the first couple will just be what's the easiest one to make a case is not a security. Some of these like Dogecoin, Litecoin, there'd be more appetite for a Solana ETF out the gates right behind ETH, but I think it'd be much harder to get the Solana ETF. Like you could probably see a Doge ETF or a Litecoin ETF before a Solana ETF, which is ridiculous.
I mean, you could see a Michael Saylor of Doge already, right? I mean, Elon kind of is, but you can see like Doge on the balance sheet. You could have a trust that owns Doge, and then it just keeps buying as the shares go to premium. I mean, that's the extreme. Yeah. I mean, so eventually the market may be like, okay, what if I don't care? It's still just a mechanism. So I think right now we're in the Goldilocks period of like market access, which is like, now that we have access to this liquidity, we can do all these things. Eventually it'll get to the point where it's priced more efficiently. But I think the first coins to get ETFs, they get that rotational effect, they get that diversification effect. It's like SPACs, right? SPACs used to do really well, and then everyone did a SPAC, and then they didn't do very well. Or it's the same with like, listing cannabis stocks. For the first two do really well, and then the 10th one, doesn't do as well. So I don't think it'll be as crazy as, I don't think it'll be that crazy. I think where the shenanigans can come in, though, is if coins have already been cornered and then they get ETFs listed, and then that can create a lot of like recursive, like reflexive buying, because there's just so little supply of spot coins. That could happen on some coins like BCH or like, Litecoin, where it's like stalled out for so long and no one knows who owns it anymore. That's what you could see happen. It's hard to say because these memes also aren't that strong anymore. At the same time, if they go up, people will come up with a narrative for why it's going up. So
Litecoin was 400 when Bitcoin was 20K. It's like Bitcoin's 100K, Litecoin should be 16. Like you could start coming up with these relative valuations.
It's catching up. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay.